what's really interesting about some of the part of what you just said is when you think of like Lomachenko, I think you mentioned Lomachenko. When he's in the ring, he's doing a lot of wild stuff that you don't see individuals in boxing teach, or you don't see people who are working on that like teach, but it's because he has a background of dance. Like he has that totally outside background dancing where the footwork from literally just play, he brought that into boxing. And I mean, I don't know if he has the best record ever or whatever, but like when you watch Lomachenko box, you got to pull this up too. It's insane. Like you can't even fathom. Like you're like, how the fuck do I train that? You know?
Well, watch his training. It's all about, it looks just like what he's doing. Like you said, it's neuro-optical based, right? And I got pages of notes of just my thoughts on these things, right? Because there's not a lot of.
I'm sorry if you're listening to the podcast right now, and you gotta check this out.
Yeah, we're checking out Lomachenko. And watch his eyes. That's what I watch. Watch his eyes. They're always seeing everything. He never loses vision, even when he's slipping or underneath. And he's playing with his opponent's eyes. And a lot of his movements actually are creating obstructions and very subtle things that give him opportunities that other people don't even realize exist.
Well, I think, someone like Muhammad Ali just had like an incredible flow. He didn't do anything, crazy, but for his size, people forget that Muhammad Ali probably has like one of the most impressive physiques in the history of sport as well. Like he looked incredible when he was young, but he did some unconventional things. He would run in boots that were like heavy intentionally. Try to bring the knees up a little bit more. And whenever you see video of him, he's not just running. Like he's not just out there running. He's running backwards. He's running sideways. He's throwing punches. And he looks like he's dancing. And he would talk about it in the ring, how he's just going to dance around. Like he talked about George Foreman in that famous fight where he did the rope-a-dope. He just kept on the ropes and talked about how he's going to dance around George Foreman. And George Foreman was killing everybody. George Foreman knocked out Joe Frazier, I think, in 3 rounds. And Joe Frazier is the guy that, he gave Muhammad Ali a lot of fits and broke his jaw and all kinds of crazy stuff. So for Ali to be like, hey, I'm just going to dance around George Foreman, everyone's like, yeah, right. But look at him. Look at how many missed shots. I mean, how demoralizing is that? So I'd rather have you punch me than make me miss like that.
Yeah. And he's having a blast. Hey, that's fun. He's having a good time.
That was 21 punches in 10 seconds.
And that's the whole thing. You have the mind-muscle connection, which is so valuable in training, right? And Ben Patrick talks about the mind. That's a part of what we were talking about earlier, where I was like, I love that idea behind the focus in the feeling of that, and not just the mind-muscle, but the mind pattern, like that connection to this bigger pattern. And I think that's a part of that value in the training. But when it comes down to fighting especially, it exposes everything to the highest level because the consequences are so great. There's no greater consequences than in fighting. They're real and they're personal to that athlete. And so that's the things that you would rather them not have to be the truth be defined by the actual them getting knocked out, and then actually have a person that's open and vulnerable enough to listen. They're confronting fear at the highest level. Every fighter. There's not a fighter out there that's not scared. Fighting is fear, right? It is pressure, right? Then why are fighting camps and coaches still training fighters with pressure? Because I get it, like if you're doing like Tiger Woods' dad and you're just going to like simulate pressure by just talking to him like he's a piece of trash and like, well, if he can deal with that, he can zone out everything. You're teaching him to deflect. You're teaching them to actually to like pebbles off a stop sign, I always say. It's like they're learning how to ding, the information's coming and they're actually learning how to close it off. That can be a skill or it can be a total detriment, right? Because now I'm cutting myself off to other information, other sensation, other things that are important. What's important is that I notice and hear it, but it moves through me, right? It's just a thing where, do I take it personal? Well, me taking it personal is really the issue more than it is me hearing it. Right? So the idea is dealing with the core issue is the fact that you're taking something personal that might be an exercise, right? Or if somebody's saying something to you that you might even told them to say to you to help you put pressure on you, and then you feel a certain way about it, well, that's the thing that needs to be investigated. But if we're not spending some time in a deeper place, in active meditation. Some of my most profound thoughts about where I can correct a thing I'm doing that may not be fair happens in that moment of isolation where I've cut off the sensations and I'm moving in a very diligent way. But my intentions are also to be open and to be reflective. And I think those intentions are the thing that are most valuable when it comes to performance. And with these fighters, confronting fear in a healthy way is a difference of championship mentality or a successful career. But then you lose when it matters, right? And so my objective working with fighters is realizing if I can help them treat the mind through this training, and we can work on talking about fear, and we can talk about, John Jones used to always say, talk about the samurai's death, right? So he would allow himself to go into the darkest place and to visualize losing and being exposed and being knocked out and in just the worst possible outcome. And in the samurai's case would be death, right? But in what it does is from that point forward, you're kind of free. Because
is this like when we were talking in the gym, you mentioned some fighters have anxiety before a fight, but they never bring that up and they use their camp as like, you know,
they create utopia.
You're better at explaining that. So
right. And Alan Belcher is a source of a lot of wisdom for me because he had this guy that has this huge seasoned career in the UFC who retired basically while he was in the top 5 because of an injury at 26 years old at the top of his game because of, you know, and not only that, he was having success in business. So he was like, he had some security, you know, and security sometimes is our biggest enemy, you know, because we forget what got us there. And those driving forces that seek comfort or lies, you know, and because you get to the point where you meet goals or you do this or you do that, you meet this intended vision of this controlled thing you tried to create. And you realize how empty that was and how limiting it was too, because you could have set bigger goals if you wanted to, you know, like the labels are the things we got to be careful of. And I think the wisdom in working with guys like Alan, who are confronting fear and do it in such a relaxed way, it's all about the mind. I'll tell you what, this is profound. This is one of the deeper parts of of this moment that happened with Alan in his last fight. Because I don't care how long you've done it, there's always it's a process of managing yourself, right? And we do all these breath work and yoga twice a week, and we go deep because it's so helpful for those guys in managing. And now they're talking about fears that I've never heard them talk about. They're talking about their emotional experience. And these are like, to me, sitting back, I'm like, now that's when I shut up and I just let it all go and just like the outpouring.
But some would wonder, why is that important for this fighter to do? Like, you know, why, if they feel anxious before a fight or they have anxiety about it, why don't they just train their ass off so they feel confident enough to be able to go into the fight? Why do they need to talk about it?
There's different levels, right? And there's different experiences for each person. And you have some guys that don't even know what loss is. They've just used that training and they've hidden behind that because they didn't have a reason to appreciate what we're talking about. And those are why undefeated fighters, usually it takes a really special guy that's really mentally strong and has a deeper sense of wisdom to really stay undefeated for long periods of time. Even if you look at like Floyd Mayweather, people are only seeing what they see. They're not realizing that through that dedication and discipline and training, he's learning things and insights about life, about opposition, about combat, such a deeper, he's playing chess while everybody's playing checkers. And it's from his obsession, his showing up every day. And yeah, the training's cool, but it's really what is it teaching him in terms of how he's learning, and he's looking at it from such a deeper angle than people give him credit for. That's why he's who he is. But I think those are the things we got to remember. The mental is the thing, right? So it's the governor, and we need to sometimes stop thinking about the movement and the body and all these other things and think about the best fighters these days have great generalship. It's what they do without even throwing strikes. It's the way they're able to control and generate positions from their opposition. Like, look at Izzy. he's literally steering that guy around like a matador.
Yeah.
What did Muhammad
Very
Ali?
reminiscent of Silva.
He said, "These guys are bulls. I need to be a matador." And man, it's if you watch a bullfight, the matador that's sexy, right? The bull just looks like a big dummy, you know. And it's like, well, I don't want to be that guy. You know, I want to be the matador. That's cool.
How do you think differently? I'm actually curious about this. When you see somebody like Kamaru Usman and the way he fights versus someone like Israel Adesanya, I think Usman has a better record, and he was actually going towards St. Pierre's. But would you say that, like, comparing the type of fighters they are, would you say one is a better fighter than the other?
No, I think what they both are amazing at is knowing their self and being very honest with themselves and their own insufficiencies as well. And I promise you, both of them, their process doesn't include them trying to glorify their strengths. Their process is really being honest about their insufficiencies. And their conversations and training with their partners are totally different. You know, it's really, and not only that, lifestyle. You know, they both don't put unneeded pressure on themselves. They both know how to process and deal with their emotions. When you hear Usman on Joe Rogan's podcast 2 or 3, 4 days after he got knocked out on national television, did he seem bitter?
I seem chill.
He seemed chill because guess
Very
what?
chill.
He knows I signed up for this.
I think that's the only guy to ever do that I've heard of. Like go and do a big interview like that after that's
A big loss.
a big loss. Yeah, it's huge.
And not only that, but imagine how you don't think him going on Joe Rogan was probably as significant as him fighting in that. That's something that he was probably really thinking about and
It's
building
a
up.
powerful person to be able to do that.
Sure. And so he was probably visualizing going on there and talking about him
Winning.
his success, right? So
This clip is brought to you by Merrick Health, the premium telehealth network from Derek Moore Plates More Dates. Get your blood work and hormone optimization done under the same roof. Enjoy this clip.
now the humility to go through and to be who he was, that's who he is. That's why he's a champ. That's a champ. That's a mindset. That's a way of living. That's a way he conducts himself. It has nothing to do with whether or not he's holding that belt. His posture is championship posture. He's assuming that identity, and him holding that belt is just a material thing. But he's a champ right now in his mind. It doesn't change, and that's all the champs. That's all the greats. They do that, and that's the thing. Whenever they get championship status and they have the belt, they're not surprised. Everybody else is surprised, you know. And so that's a part of their trust and commitment to that is because they're living the lifestyle. They're challenging their mind. They're feeling that moment that you had yesterday, and they're going to get a sip of water, taking a walk, and coming back to it, and they're finishing, and not letting themselves. If I quit that, what's stopping me from quitting anything? And every time I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to walk away. That's everything. Even if it's in your mind, if it's an emotion that makes you walk out of a room, but you might have lost the opportunity to get information, that's something that might be limiting your greatness, right? And these are things that are practices of life and awarenesses that we're able to. It's a game we can play, but first we have to transcend into a higher thing. We have to get out of the place of judgment and get into a state of witnessing and learning. And now it's an attitude of understanding and connection. And that's essentially when we think about neuroplasticity and flexibility of the mind. That's really the goal. It's trying to facilitate connection. And these things that we do sometimes in our thoughts, I think, are actually stopping our brain from achieving the states that we want to achieve. You know,
with some of the people that you're helping, how do you assist them in having a championship mindset so that they can get better? Because I think a lot of people, they don't give themselves enough credit. Like, anyone can be some version of an athlete. Anyone can go and utilize some of the stuff from the best people in the world, the pros, and they could actually utilize some of these things. Like, you'll see sometimes a pro football player might tweak his knee and then he's like on a bike on the sidelines and stuff like that. These are things that if you maybe you played a pickup game, a softball or something, and you're at your work and you tweaked a knee, you could be the similar person. You could have this kind of championship mindset where you're like, well, recovery is going to be for me to lean into this and get more movement. How are you taking some people that have chronic pain, they don't want to move, their brain almost won't allow them to move, they got a governor set on them because they don't believe they can do certain things. How are you helping these people?
you have to respect their pain first. And I think a lot of people in my position, they try to discredit pain in an effort to achieve that goal. So again, their goal is to help, but they're doing it in the fashion where now let's just say that person, they have labeled themselves with that diagnosis of fibromyalgia or whatever. Oh, I have arthritis, I have this, I have that. Well, that's okay. That's just what it is. And that's nothing. And yeah, it kind of sucks that the medical system and literally a doctor having to classify that person so they can bill an insurance company and get paid. That label is really what's now a part of this person's existence. And I meet them for the first time and they say, okay, well, I have fibromyalgia and I have arthritis or whatever those diagnoses are, stenosis or whatever, sciatica,
bulge disc, all these things. You hear people say it all the time.
Plantar fasciitis. Yeah. We're talking these are states. These aren't diseases or chronic. The fibromyalgia is a kind of a catch-all categorization of something where I'm not sure it's an affliction, but it's fibro. It's related to the fascia and the muscle. Fibromyalgia, pain of the muscle, in fact, fibrous tissue.
It's vague.
Yeah. But it's just pain of fibrous tissue, really muscle.
Wow.
That's what it means.
But people think it's something they're tethered to.
Oh, it's like something like a genetic derangement or some type of disease that's like a real condition,
Mm-hmm.
So
you've had to deal with a lot of people that have had fibromyalgia, and you've been able to reverse that.
Well, I think that's one thing we forget too in the normal population.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere. That label is used to prescribe medicines. Mm-hmm. So people have that diagnosis. Whether or not they accept it, it's up to them. But the ones that do accept it, that becomes their disability. Mm-hmm. Because their connection to this thing to justify to my family why I'm taking these medicines that the doctor prescribed that they don't think I should be on. Well, I have fibromyalgia. Well, I don't know. I don't think you need those medicines. Blah, blah, blah. So now they hunker into this to now proving this state of disease and dysfunction. So the people around them but all it does now is make you get worse and you get worse because you love me and you want to protect me. And so it's these negative downward spirals that I'm witnessing.
Yeah.
And then seeing in the clinic where I'm helping these people in different stages. And I realized that the biggest way for me to help them is to get to the point of having that conversation about the inner dynamics of the home and getting them to start to peel back the layers on why they are attached to that, right?
So you don't attack it directly from a movement perspective. You're like, let's see what's going on.
Now,
you sound like you're a psychiatrist for these people.
You are, because I want to help them. Wow. And I realize
long term,
and it's not based off of them needing me. It's based off of them finding something inside of themselves. And so I use movement to help create an experience of success. So a person that's not moving at all, if I can get them laying on their back in a hook lying position, their knees bent, and we can work on expansion and compression of the core. I just want you to start with the nose and the diaphragm, feel the body, feel the chest, and release. Mm-hmm. So we're going to let's say a 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out interval, which we know is going to downshift them into a parasympathetic state. So now, once I can see they finally connect to this and they can focus on this, the key element is internal focus, right? This is a primordial movement pattern. It's the breath. And that's the one that person, regardless of their condition, I can teach them how to do this and they can feel an improvement. Mm-hmm. And guess what? When they sit up, it's visceral. They could sit up right now and they said it was a 10 out of 10 when they arrived. How you feel now? 8 out of 10. Well, guess what? That's better. Mm-hmm. And what is it? It's momentum. Just like with the parabol, we're talking about utilizing momentum, and then you find this release where your body is not working as hard because you're allowing the fascial slings to connect to the motion, to the ground. Mm. And so it's the same philosophy. All right. It's just about trying to help them find the grounding forces of the gravity pushing and now their back and their spine is supported. And now gravity is moving into their body and they can feel these movements that they can't feel standing or sitting. Mm. And so, and not only that, but I never lay on my back. Well, come on. Your orientation against gravity is the best way to condition your nervous system in terms of your vestibular system, right? Because if your vestibular system is based off of orienting your head position in relation to your body. So, for instance, if your head is never below your body, like in a handstand or even in like a big extended movement or a side bending movement or a side bending motion, you're not allowing the fluid in those hula hoops, which I always think of it like interconnected hula hoops, that fluid's kind of shifting and moving through. And you got these little hairs that are nerve endings that are detecting the fluid's movement through those canals. But what happens is we're always in these very isolated positions, and as we get older, we develop these little crystallizations due to the lack of fluid being able to circulate through those tubes. And so when the head and the body get in a certain position, there's a disorientation.
So, real quick, do you think that individuals, over time, if somebody doesn't attack that system, there's dysfunction? So do you think people who are younger should be like just randomly going and rolling around?
Yeah.
Just like hitting rolls? And
if you look at my stuff, sometimes we just like literally, we'll lay on the floor and just literally roll across the floor and just figure out how to use muscles to move you while your hands and your legs are completely extended. So you have to find, yeah.
Yeah, and for some people, like if someone's in pain or has some soreness, you'll feel some myofascial release doing some
big time. It's a soft tissue massage.
Like Cadorman. Yeah, the floor is his teacher.
It is a teacher, and just like the wall is a teacher, it represents a plane, right? We all understand the planes of motion, the frontal and the sagittal, transverse planes. Now you're just thinking about these represent a plane, and it can cause me to now have a really strong awareness. Like we're in that sideline position, and we were working on posting and pivoting onto the arm. Well, if you notice, when you really roll into that arm, it gives you a perfect chamber as a fighter, right? A stand-up fighter, it teaches the elbow how to fold into the body, and we're built for combat. Your anatomy,
a lot of that pressure in there, yeah.
So think about health now in performance optimization, and now think about martial arts, right? And now think about it in what we're talking about. These are modalities that are helping to create, we're using the ground in these little fun little activities to create conformity, where the body can conform to itself and it can fold and move into itself the way it's designed. Your anatomy is based off of your ancestors surviving. They were the winners, right? Like David Wick said. So your humerus is this exact length to reach the top of your iliac crest, which that creates a shield, a lateral shield. So the tip of your elbow, right? If you hang your arms at your side, all right? Now note the bottom of your elbow and now find the top of your hip, right?
Yeah.
It's totally covered, right? There's almost zero separation.
Actually.
It overlaps.
I got I got to kind of move down to that side, but I see what you're saying.
Right. So your lower ribs and your pelvis, in a male's, your pelvis is 2 inches higher than a female's on each side. So your
lat runs right down into your hip.
Yes. Yeah. So your anatomy was based off of your ancestors.
Cool. You guys should just do that. You guys, if you're listening, sorry, if you're driving, I'm sorry, better pull over. Put your hands next to your
head. With one hand.
Yeah, you can do it while you're at the wheel. Just don't crash, please. That's dope.
Yeah, it's super dope. And now think about guarding your face, right? So if I bring my hand up to my ear, right? Because I always want to think about if you can cover the ear, because the shot behind the ear is the one that's devastating. Like if I teach a hook, I'm always teaching them to throw it, aim behind the ear, and those are usually the ones that catch the chin, believe it or not. But that's kind of the vulnerable target. So being able to access this space without losing, if I'm having to do this, right? But people don't even realize some people can't create a vertical position in their forearm, right?
You ever see those street fight videos with
right. And so
you know that shit.
Oh, dude, I
those hood videos, man.
I see that shit in person. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hilarious. And they're stuck on their back leg and everything. Those guys, a real trained fighter will destroy those guys, man. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not old school boxing.
Sure. But the idea is that all these things in fighting have really helped inform me back into understanding that this is really a holistic way of thinking in terms of creating balance in the body.
Power Project family, we appreciate you checking out this clip. Check out another one. Just go check out another one. or comment down below and let us know what you liked about this one. But we love you guys, and we're going to keep bringing you the heat. So comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, okay? Peace.